everyone, my name is Leanne, and today, in honour of International Women's Day, one of my favourite days of the year, I'm going to be telling you about 5 incredible women from history. But specifically, I'm going to be telling you about Irish women. You know, it is the Irish Readathon, so I thought I would celebrate some fantastic Irish women. And these are all women who are included in this book, Rocking the System by Siobhan Parkinson. This is published by Little Island, who are one of my favourite Irish publishers. There are so many incredible women included in this book, and I wish I had the time to tell you about every single one of them, but I have just picked 5 stories in particular that really struck me. Now, the first incredible Irish woman I would like to tell you about is Queen Maeve, and she was the Queen of Connacht, which is a province in Ireland. It is like the west of Ireland, so places like Galway and Sligo. She was Queen of Connacht around the 1st century BC. Maeve was the daughter of the High King of Ireland, and she had 5 sisters, but she was really known as being the fiercest of the siblings. When her father went on to conquer Connacht, he appointed her queen there. This put her in a really powerful position, and men from around various other kingdoms came to her in order to try and win her hand in marriage, but Maeve was having none of it. According to this book, she would only marry a man whose wedding present to her would to never be mean, jealous, or cowardly. I don't know many men that can achieve that, to be honest. Eventually, she settles down with this guy called Ailill, I think that's how you pronounce his name. But eventually they ended up getting into an argument about like who was wealthier. So they had like all of their possessions counted, and it turned out they were entirely equal apart from this white bull. So while the white bull belonged to Maeve, he had gone and joined her husband's herd because he didn't want to be led by a woman, because apparently even animals are sexist. But Maeve found out about this brown bull who was stronger, and she was like, I gotta have that brown bull. But, like, the people that owned the bull were like, no, you can't have him. And she was like, yes, I will. So she trekked up to Ulster, which is, like, the north of Ireland, and she was gonna damn well get this bull. And the warriors of Ulster were in a huge amount of trouble here because they were all confined to their beds because they were in dreadful pain. They had forced a noblewoman named Maeve to run a race while she was heavily pregnant. And because of that, she put a curse on them to experience the pain of childbirth. So there was like this rule in combat where each side of the army could send out a champion to fight on behalf of the army. In Ulster, there was one warrior who wasn't affected. His name was Cuchulainn, and he's a very famous figure from Irish legend. And no matter how many people Maeve sent out day after day, Cuchulainn always defeated them. Now, Maeve eventually did lose this battle, and she is more of a mythological figure than a historical figure. But I think it's just an incredible story to learn about and see what kind of power, both intellectually and physically and politically, that women held in early Ireland. And I just find the story of Queen Maeve really inspirational. Next historical figure I want to talk about is Anna Pannell, who lived between the years 1852 and 1911. Now, why her story in particular struck me was because I knew loads about her brother, Charles Stuart Pannell. I studied history at secondary school and I loved it. I loved it so much. I loved learning about Irish history and all the political history. And as I said, I knew a huge amount about Anna's brother Charles. But I didn't even know he had a sister. In Ireland at this time, there was a huge amount of inequality between landlords and those that were renting the land, sort of peasant farmers. And the Pannell family as a whole really fought for the rights of these people. All nationalists, which means that they believed that Ireland should be independent and not part of Britain. Anna travelled around a lot, which meant she absorbed a wealth of different experiences. And while she received no formal education, it was said of her that she knew every book that they had in the house. And she did eventually go on to study art at the Royal Academy. Now, at this time, women couldn't even vote, never mind stand for election by themselves. But when something called the Land League was set up in order to carry on fighting for the rights of those who were renting the land, a number of the male activists in this organisation were arrested and imprisoned. There was then something called the Ladies' Land League set up, which sort of carried on the fight while these men were in prison, but they also did so much more than that. and in many ways they were so much better run and functioned so much better than just the land league. Now, when Charles Stewart Pannell, Anna's brother, was released from his imprisonment in Kilmainham Jail, which is a place that you can still go and visit in Dublin, he decided to dissolve the Ladies' Land League, despite all of their hard work and dedication. I think that's a disgraceful decision, and I find myself feeling really disappointed in my education system for not telling me this story. You know, I learned so much about Charles Stewart Pannell. You know, you can just refer to him as Pannell and people know that's who you mean. There's no debate over whether you mean Anna or Charles. That's probably the story in this book that struck me the most, because I just found it so disgraceful that I didn't know who Anna Pannell was. The next prominent Irish woman I would like to tell you about is Constance Markovic, who lived from 1868 to 1927. Constance Markovic is fairly well known. I think she's definitely well known in Ireland, but she has this kind of weird reputation for just being like this kind of wacky woman when she was so much more than that. She was the first ever female MP, but she decided not to take her seat because that is something that the political party that she was part of decided to do in order to, you know, protest against British rule. Despite Constance being part of the landed gentry, her family were very aware of social issues. Again, they were very firm nationalists, and Constance Markovic was very much involved with setting up the Fianna. They were sort of like a nationalist Boy Scouts, and she took them on a lot of trips. She took them camping to kind of teach them what sort of skills she had in that. Markovic joined the Irish Citizens' Army, which were set up predominantly to fight for workers' rights in the time of the 1913 lockout, which was basically like a huge workers' strike in Dublin. She also fought in the 1916 Rising, which is another huge event in Irish history. She was imprisoned after this. Many of her male counterparts were killed, and she thought there was a huge amount of misogyny in her kind of getting off lightly, I guess. But she did go on to do a number of great things. In the 1918 election, it was the first time that women were allowed to vote and run for election, and as I said, she was the first female elected MP. She also went on to fight in the War of Independence and the Irish Civil War. I think she's just like a really prominent badass figure that people have a lot of misconceptions about, and I would love if, again, like Anna Pannell, her history was properly taught to people instead of this distorted, eccentric figure. The next figure I want to talk about comes from more contemporary history, and that is Mary Robinson, who was born in 1944. Now, Mary Robinson was the first female Irish head of state, so she was the president. The president in Ireland doesn't have the same level of political power as, say, the American president does. It's more of a representative role, I guess, kind of similar to a monarch, but elected. Mary Robinson is so impressive. She was appointed a professor of law at Trinity College Dublin when she was only 25 years old. She was someone who very publicly criticised the church. And in the 1970s, there was this real surge of feminism in Ireland, and she was a huge part of that. She's a lawyer and a senator, and she really used those roles to enact social and political change. She played a huge role in contraception being legalised in Ireland. She played a huge role in the decriminalisation of homosexuality in Ireland. In 1989, she was nominated by the Labour Party to run for the Irish presidency. Up until that point, all presidents of Ireland had been kind of like right-wing men. She, of course, won the presidential election, and she did a number of phenomenal things during her time as president. She played a huge role in easing tensions between Great Britain and Ireland, and also easing tensions between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. She was the first head of state to visit Somalia after the Civil War, and the first head of state to visit Rwanda following the terrible genocide that occurred there. When her presidency came to an end, she was appointed High Commissioner for Human Rights by the United Nations, and she did a huge amount of work in that role as well. When that role came to an end, she went on to continue her work enacting social change, but she also does a lot of work with climate change now, which is obviously a really important thing at the moment. It always has been an important thing, but it seems like people are only waking up to it now. Mary Robinson was followed in 1997 by another female Irish president, Mary McAleese, and I feel a huge amount of privilege in that I grew up in an Ireland that had such prominent female figures. I was born in 1995, so obviously I don't really remember Mary Robinson being president, but I remember the work that she's done afterwards, and I definitely remember the work done by Mary McAleese, and I feel really honoured that that was the upbringing that I had, that I always saw these really powerful female figures that could do anything and enacted the kind of change that I want to see in the world. The final figure from Irish history that I want to talk to you about is Sonya Sullivan, who was born in 1969. Now, if you've been around this channel a bit, you know that I also really, really love sport. Although how much do I really talk about how much I love sport on this channel? I'm not sure it's all that much. But Sonya Sullivan is one of the most successful Irish athletes in all history. I am just going to read you out a list of her achievements because there are so many. So she won 3 World Championship gold medals and 3 European Championship gold medals for middle distance running. Has got so many more accolades other than that as well. She didn't really have a huge amount of Olympic success for various circumstances. You know, the timing of the Olympics was really bad for her. She suffered from a lot of illnesses and setbacks around the times of the Olympics. But she did win a silver medal in the Sydney Games in 2000. I think something that's really important to remember there is that she gave birth to her first daughter in July 1999. This gave her just over a year to prepare for the Olympics, and she won a silver medal. She gave birth to her second daughter in 2001, so she's carried on her athletic career throughout both of those pregnancies, and I just find that absolutely phenomenal. And that kind of dedication and drive is something that it seems like she always had, you know, even from her childhood. She wasn't really going out to like discos with her mates. She always wanted to go to training every single day. Recent research has suggested that a lot of the opponents that beat Sonya Sullivan in the Olympics may have been involved in doping, so they may have been taking performance-enhancing drugs. Obviously, there's no way to know whether Sonya would have beaten those runners if they hadn't been taking those kinds of drugs. She was never involved in any kind of doping scandal. But I think it just makes her look all the more impressive, really. O'Sullivan hasn't lost her love for running, and she is often in charge of the Irish Olympic team. She commentates on a lot of athletics for RTE, which is Ireland's national broadcaster, and she also has a regular column in the Irish Times. So she's still very much involved with sport, and I just find her so inspirational. And again, she was a woman who I was very aware of growing up, and I think that's something that really instilled a lot of confidence in me as a child, you know, having this real prominence and visibility of incredible Irish women. That just, I'm really glad I had that. So yeah, they are 5 fearless and amazing Irish women who made history. And as I said, there are so many more incredible women in this book, including a lot of literary figures, writers, poets, which you guys may be interested in. I would really recommend this book if you are interested in learning more about Irish history. I thought this book was phenomenal. And while it's aimed at young adults, I still got so much out of this book. I thought it was absolutely incredible. I think this is going to be a book that I return to quite a lot. If you don't know anything about the Irish Readathon, I will leave all the information linked down below in the description if you want to find out more about it. It's not too late to join in. If you are participating, I would love to know how you're getting on with your reading, whether you're just reading one book or you're participating in all the challenges. I would love you to let me know down below in the comments and any other thoughts you have about anything that I've mentioned in this video. I hope you guys are doing really well, and I will talk to you in my next video.